This is the CreaseCast.
The last two games were carbon copies.
Yeah, like,
honestly. Carbon cop with double P E's with two P's. I'm so damn proud of that.
Well, anyways, folks, thanks for listening to tonight's episode of the CreaseCast. If you just heard that pun, I get it if you want to turn it off.
Don't hate me because
don't hate the puns.
Yeah.
As an elderly man, I appreciate dad puns more than anything on the planet Earth. But we're not here to talk about puns. We're here to talk about Taj 1944 and
guys,
our existence as humans.
It's me. I'm Taj. I can't believe they found me out, I was planning to do a face reveal at 1 million subs on YouTube, but I'm so disappointed that they found me out so soon. Never mind the fact that I tweet all the time on an account that has 400 and something followers, and even though why would I do that if I have a 6,000 follower one, right? Like,
yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. It just sometimes life just gets ahead of you like that,
Yeah, I was gonna just add on like that. I'm actually in fact Taj.
Oh,
and
really?
I'm a big Taj guy, hence the hat. There's obviously a grand conspiracy, and the person calling for that grand conspiracy is correct. There is obviously collusion amongst the media to form the most negative of narratives about this Canucks team because they couldn't possibly be doing this under their own accord with their play as of late. But no, It's obviously a media-driven narrative. They certainly made up the fact that the Jets came into Vancouver and shit all over the Canucks 5-1. They got dominated in the control stats, but they won the war in goals for. Andrew Copp was not a bastard and scored 4 goals for them. Yeah. One night it was Adam Lowry putting on a show and scoring 2. And then Andrew Copp saying, hey, depth scoring is actually a really good thing and helps us win. We should do more of that. And so he stepped up and got 2 in the first period, then 2 in the third. Lachlan, I don't know. I mean,
where to begin?
Where to begin? Like,
I mean,
the playoffs are gone.
Like, yeah. I feel like the best place to start right now is legitimately with Connor Hellebuyck because, look, he's actually had not that great a season by his standards. There are a lot, like if you go and look at Daily Faceoff, Elite Prospects, their game log, there are a lot of sub 900 games in that smattering of games played, including a few against the Canucks. But for some reason, in the grand scheme of things, whenever Connor Hellebuyck plays Vancouver, generally, he just turns into, I don't know, Dominic Hasek, Martin Brodeur, and Jacques Plante, all the best things of them just put together. He just does, all at the same time, and Roberto Luongo, of course, the big four. And, he goes from a shutout in the game on, what was it, on Tuesday or Monday?
Monday, I think, yeah.
Yeah, the Monday game. To coming as close as you can get to another one before Nils Höglander, the people's champ, saves the day.
Getting a garbage time goal, yeah.
At the very last minute. How much more negative would we have been about that game had he not put a puck in the net? I can imagine I would be a little bit more mad.
Honestly, I'm a very negative person in general, so
that's true.
That goal really didn't do much to curb my analysis or my negativity. I want to see Nils Höglander score as much as possible, even if it's in a garbage time goal. The worst garbage goals are when Jake Virtanen finally crashes the net and then wires a beautiful wrist shot with 2 minutes remaining, and they're still down 4 goals. Those are the worst garbage time goals to ever watch because you're just
where was that? That was that the first 50 damn minutes.
The Höglander goal itself was I'm not gonna say it's fluky because obviously there's a ton of hand eye that went into that, but it was a puck that got redirected off one body, redirected off of Hoglander's stick, off of another body, and then past Hellebuyck's, like I think blocker side or something like that. Like he had no chance on it, and it took every bounce on the planet to go right for them to score. So like, whatever.
Yeah.
Game sucked. Bottom line, like, I mean, I don't know about you. I think you fell asleep during the Monday game, or was it the Wednesday?
The Wednesday game. It was the Wednesday game. So we were going to record one of our Patreon pods that night after the game.
Yeah.
And I literally and this is okay. I joked that it's the Canucks' fault, but it's not. Day work is just killing me a little bit, as it tends to do.
It's kind of their fault, though.
It's a little their fault. I mean, they didn't keep.
They're the ones that ice the product, that keep people entertained and awake. And if they can't do that on a Wednesday night, then they've failed, and that's their fault.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair.
Yeah.
And I did, I was watching the game on my phone, and then next thing I knew, I was just asleep in my chair. I kid you not, I woke up to John Shortus being like, Andrew Copp scores again, on the his second goal on the second too many men penalty of the game, and we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
But oh man, it was a bummer. And yeah. You know what? For what it's worth, if I have to say something positive about that game, I mean the Canucks did get 39 shots on net, so it wasn't like it wasn't for a lack of chances so much as it was they got outplayed by a very, very good goaltender who's had a tough year, but when he's on, and that was it. 974 save percentage for Connor Hellebuyck. You can do with that. Yeah, no, it's a little tough there. It's a little tough to give him that. But we do have plenty of critiques for the way the game played out, because I mean there were a lot of mistakes that could have been handled differently as far as the way as game deployment and just the way things went. A lot of bench mistakes. And it really cost them. And, I guess we'll get into the infinity blocker if we have to give one out.
Yeah, if we have to.
I mean, besides Andrew Copp, who's your guy? Who are you giving it to?
I'm going to have to say infinity blocker goes to, I guess, no one. I don't think anybody deserved it. I think everyone played like shit. They didn't look like they were really invested in it. Seemed like Andrew Copp scored the first goal on the first bench the too many men minor, and it looked like they have just completely checked out. I'm all for the advanced stats, that's my entire MO with the Comets, the Corsi for, the Corsi against, all that stuff. But you cannot honestly tell me that them out attempting the Jets, 59% of the time or whatever, that they looked better than them. I'm sorry, point shots. We talked about this in our Tuesday episode, that you can float all of the point shots you want from the outside and out attempt them that way, but they're not threatening, they're not dangerous, and I don't really care what this is where the eye test takes over, and I go, I don't really think they played well at all, despite what the analytics side says about their game. I'm not a fan of the point shots, the constant point shots, the constant floaters from the wall in the hopes that they're going to get past the Jets team and get tipped on goal. I don't know if anyone's noticed, or I don't know if the Canucks staff have noticed, but the Jets rock like one of the biggest teams in the Canada's North Division. Every single center is 6'5". Adam Lowry is 6'5" something. Andrew Copp is 6'2". Freaking Blake Wheeler is a giant himself. Not a single player that is tasked with the job of clearing their slot or their high slot is a small, undersized guy besides Nick Ehlers. And Nick Ehlers never has to play defense because he's constantly in the offensive zone generating attempts with Kyle Connor or Pierre-Luc Dubois. So the strategy doesn't work. And maybe at the end of the night, you're oh, cool, we out attempted them 69-38. Doesn't matter. They're just going off bodies. It doesn't mean anything.
Quality over quantity.
Exactly. And there was no quality
Yeah.
at all in the 2-game series. And you even go back to like the Montreal series too. Like their offense is so predicated on fortunate bounces, which is not a strategy that's going to lend itself to a streak that will take them into playoffs, especially now when they're looking at needing 35. Like they need to double their current point totals and then some in the next 19 games, which is a huge ask. You're basically asking them to go undefeated,
Basically.
which if you're a pessimist like me, you've pretty much accepted like the season's toast. There's no way they can dig themselves out of this hole. Besides, like I said, a 19-game win streak, every single one in regulation, and you don't hand over points. That's the only way you're getting out of this.
Pretty much. And, you know, to be a little bit fair to the Canucks in a way, I mean, they're playing very shorthanded right now. I mean, even Bo Horvat was in the lineup, which,
yeah.
I mean, I guess if I'm going to give an infinity blocker to anyone, I'll give it to Bo Horvat playing on a fresh bone bruise that looked awful.
Fair.
Absolutely awful. I will give it to him just for the sheer will and dedication alone.
Yeah.
And you know, but there's only so much you can do when Horvat is your only center from opening night who's still playing in the faceoff dot. And you know, from the looks of things, he will be for a while now. I mean, Sutter is an interesting question because I believe he did take warm-ups, and then did not play. No idea what's going on there. I don't think we have any specific information on that or anything, but I mean, Pettersson is not supposed to be back, possibly, maybe not till the end of the season, but for a while to come anyway. Because, I mean, we're not getting any good, and all the updates we've gotten on him have been less than ideal, basically just shifting the timeline farther and farther down the road.
Right.
And, you know, they did as much as they could, I think, with the lineup that they are currently playing with. Yes, that Horvat, Besser, Höglander line could be a little bit more lethal if given the time. But right now, they're basically just playing on borrowed time as it is, hoping that they can get into the playoffs. And it's looking more and more like it's just not going to happen for them. And I wouldn't get my hopes up. Things can happen. Things can happen. This division is stupid in all ways of how the actual results play out. But because I mean, hell, like this is a team like we've beaten Ottawa before. Ottawa beat Toronto recently. Like I don't think they beat them in the last game, but they beat them over the weekend or something. Mm-hmm. It's like that weird cycle of you can literally do a cycle of this. Every team has beaten basically every other team in weird fashion at some point. It is still like very. Like, still somewhat in the cards that a team can get really bad all of a sudden and the Canucks could just kind of step over them into the playoffs. But
like they already did that with Calgary.
Right.
Calgary just fell off the face of the planet and they just look like they're speaking of checked out.
Self-destructing.
They're self-destructing and they leapt them. They had already leapt Ottawa, which, you know,
that was going to happen.
Great. Like everyone kind of expected that to happen. But in these games when I think I have 2 games left against Winnipeg in the remainder of the season. So if you're giving up regulation points, not even taking loser points against a team that is already 7 points ahead of you in the standings for second place, like you need to win these games because if it comes down to a head-to-head, you're screwed.
One team that you just can't beat that like just has the advantage over you every single time can absolutely kill your season. It's enough to absolutely destroy it. And actually at the beginning of the season, I said the team that would probably do that is Winnipeg, just because they're much bigger, they play still a pretty quick style of game and the Canucks have been really cursed playing them for a long time. They're very good at beating teams. The Jets are, they're not the best team at all on paper, but for some reason, the way that they're designed and they're constructed, they're very well built to handle teams like Vancouver, Toronto, and those are the teams that you need to beat to get in. And Winnipeg is doing that right now, where Vancouver just can't. They've got a couple teams that they just have the edge over, like Ottawa, obviously, and I guess maybe Calgary. They've done okay against the Flames this year. I think they have a lot of games against Calgary still left in the air. But
I had read that Winnipeg, like Paul Maurice, or I think it was Cheval Day Off or something, basically said that it's really like anticipated them playing in the like an all Canadian division because their team is like specifically structured to face off against the heavy big teams of the Central Division. Like they're basically constructing a team that has speed and size to compete with someone like the St. Louis Blues as much as possible. So now that they're in a division that typically doesn't have size that they need to compete with, all of a sudden Winnipeg are like the bullies out there. Like the only other massively big team, I guess, would be Calgary.
I was going to say Montreal
too, just based on like I guess
they have Shea Weber,
Paul Sherrod and stuff like that.
Yeah, Yoel Armia, he's pretty big.
Yeah, so former Winnipeg Jet.
Brendan Gallagher isn't big, but he plays like he is
big. But yeah, like you know what I mean. Like you have an inherent advantage where you've structured your team to play like a completely different style relative to the division, where you suddenly come into the North where you occasionally play them during the year, but you're catering your team to a completely different style of play. And now your style of play, like look at how they play against Vancouver, look how they, tune the Alberta teams. Like Winnipeg has one less regulation win than Toronto does.
Yeah. They are
I think it's 3 less regulation wins, but regardless, the fact that they're like up there with some of the tops in the division, like that tells you something. Like the strategies, the systems that they have, and like the roster that they have works. Whereas the Canucks, like we can talk until we're blue in the face about how there's no, like this was the worry last year that they don't have an identity. Like what's their identity?
You know what their identity is, and it was, well, at least it was last year. Their identity was like grit and grind, like grind out a lot of victories that you maybe necessarily shouldn't. Like offense was part of it, but they play this very much we're going to just battle to the very end. Sometimes we're gonna lose the lead, but we'll be able to come back and win it late or in overtime sort of thing. Yeah. Which I personally think is the wrong way that they should be building, considering their best players are very much you should be playing high flying offense where your goaltending is, where you might be just playing a lot of like 6-4 or 7-5 games sort of thing, like Toronto kind of does. Yeah. Because you have the wheels, you have the offensive pieces to be able to do that when you're healthy. But they've always really stuck back, and it's really I think it's made it difficult. And now this year, they've lost so many of their key players who really set their identity, like that it's kind of disappeared. And it's just a matter of, it's literally just, what are you? Like, you can't, like, they still do they still grind out a few games here and there, but that's not really what they're able to do. But that's not really what they're built to do anymore.
It's not what they're able to do, and they're not good at it anymore.
No.
There's no fire. There's no battle, there's no comeback attempt. It's just like they get down and they're just like, okay.
If you put the Canucks up against Minnesota like they did the way they did in the play-in round last year, do they win? I think they don't. I think if you put them against St. Louis, do they win? I think maybe that one's more likely, but no, they probably still don't, just because they don't have the horses to keep up anymore.
Right.
This is the situation the Canucks find themselves in, because now you're entering the trade deadline where hopefully you're going to see some differences and some decisions made that will impact the long-term future and make things better for your long-term future. So that way, when the games matter a little bit more, because in a way it almost feels like they don't matter as much this year, just because there's no fans in the building. There's not like a bunch of like ticket sales on the line or anything every night. So it almost feels like you can take a little bit of a mulligan on this year. Right. Next year, it's going to matter a whole lot more. Like, imagine the Canucks come out in that home opener, that first game back since March of last year, and completely stink. And just how mad everyone in the building is going to be, because that's been building up this whole time. And I mean, you look at tonight as a kind of a microcosm, or the last game is a microcosm of that, where, I mean, I go right back to the too many men penalties, like just getting completely missed. Like, that's a huge bench error for you to get caught on it twice in the same period.
Twice in the same period is like just like you slap yourself in the face. Like, what are you guys doing? Like the second one, like, okay, Jake Virtanen is skating to the bench, intimating he is going for a change in a situation where you might not want to be changing because you have possession, unless you were gunning it for the bench to get on a better player to hold possession inside the offensive zone. But he was just changing. I don't know why, but he was like lethargic. He wasn't really trying. Quinn Hughes is walking the line, so he backhands a pass to him, and Jake, being Jake, plays it, even though the player right in front of him has clearly jumped off of the bench and onto the ice surface. And you're like, dude, you've been in this league, you've been playing hockey since you were like 6 years old. How do you not recognize the situation that you're in right now? Like a situation that happens millions of times over the course of your hockey playing career. Like, surely you would have noticed like what's about to occur. And like, yeah, McEwen, same thing. You've been playing hockey long enough. You should have probably recognized that it's Jake Virtanen coming towards the bench. He's probably going to do something stupid. So don't just hop on like out of nowhere, especially with Quinn Hughes walking the line. Like, people are going to pressure him. He's probably going to have to give up the puck. Like, it's just egregious, unforced errors that kind of blow this team apart. And I mean, we can get into some of the most egregious errors from the night, which would have been Tyler Myers getting caught out on multiple super extended shifts. And
do you think that was on purpose, like his decision, like his call? No. Like where he's just not, or they're leaving him out there? Like, I don't think
it's not a coaching call. I doubt he's skating towards the bench and Nolan Baumgartner's like, hey, stay out, because no one was injured as far as we know. Jordy Ben was healthy. Travis Hamonic was healthy. Everyone finished the game completely fine. I can't imagine that Nolan Baumgartner is that stupid to realize that Tyler Myers playing a 247-minute long shift is good for the team or Myers himself. I mean, if he does, and this isn't a Myers issue, like, because Myers did have options to change off on, I think, a couple dump-ins, but instead elected to retreat back into the defensive zone and extend his shift for some reason. If that's a coaching decision, and Nolan Baumgartner like has this like wild idea that Tyler Myers is good at defending, then I'm not worried so much about the whole Green and Baumgartner don't have extensions for next year, because that game was a huge exposure and just like a magnifying glass at the end of a telescope, just laser focused on how bad Tyler Myers is at defending. Because all he has right now is dropping to a knee and flailing his stick around and hoping he doesn't get beat. Other than that, that's all he has when he's sitting in the defensive zone. Maybe when he's on the rush and he's skating backwards, when he doesn't plant, he's actually got the ability to keep pace, try and force guys to the outside or prevent chances. But that rarely happens, because most of the time he slides to the slot, goes onto his belly, and sprawls out and hopes for the best. And we saw it in, I don't even know how many goals against the Jets, where he was just completely lost, looking for the puck, spinning around on a knee, on his stomach, whatever, and get the team getting scored on. Yeah. So Nolan Baumgartner can't catch that, then yeah, I'm not really too worried about him not getting extended for next year. But if it's a Myers thing where he just simply doesn't have the decision-making skills to recognize that he's been out on the ice for close to 3 minutes, multiple times in a single game, then, oh boy, just a reminder, 3 more years at $6 million.
Yeah, it's hard to decide like where the blame is on that, especially because like it's not like he does that all the time. Like, I don't think we've had a lot of cases this year where it's been like, oh, hey, Tyler Myers is out for 2+ minutes. Have there?
I don't think it's got it. The Tyler Myers count down or count up or whatever. The Tyler Myers shift counter has come up at least every single game this year.
Has it really?
Yes, because he gets caught out every single game on these giant extended shifts. And like we said, if it's a Myers thing where he doesn't recognize that he's getting caught out, then that's really rough look on him. If it's a coaching thing and they are forcing him into these lose-lose scenarios where he's basically just like on completely gassed legs. And I mean that one goal, like Travis Hamonic clearly can see that Myers is fucking completely gassed, and he takes it around the net. He has all the space in the planet on his center and his left wing. And instead he plays the puck to Myers along the boards, doesn't even have a stick on the ice. He's just leaning against the boards, basically. Results in a turnover, results in a goal against. And you're like, if that's Nolan Baumgartner thinking I can keep doing this to Myers and keeping him out there for 3 minutes, then honestly, I'm going to rescind my critiques of the people who say that coaching isn't the problem, because if that is Baumgartner's decision, then you need a visit to the optometrist, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, you look at because I mean, I'm watching that shift right now where I just see Meyer like the guy is again, he's tired, and I gotta imagine that he must have been out there on his own, because he's not even close to go, because they have maybe Hamonic should have been paying a little bit of attention to the fact that, number one, that Myers is not his normal partner. And number two, that but like Myers is standing far on the other board, the opposite boards of the bench. He has no way.
His body language couldn't possibly Wyatt Arnold had it in the Athletic. Like, he is carrying the body language of a player in beer league who is clearly just take the puck yourself. Let me change. Don't give me the puck. I'm begging you.
But except he's on the other side. Like, he's not near the bench. He's not even going for the bench. Why?
Yeah, because he doesn't have any legs. He can't. He's gassed.
If you're gassed, but he has to skate off. Like, it almost to me looks like I'm in. Like, it looked almost more to me like he's like, I'm not tired. I'm gonna keep going. Like, the issue is he didn't care. Like, he was just gonna keep skating if they let him.
Sure, but the issue is that the Canucks system requires if one of the D-men is carrying the puck up ice and into the offensive zone, Myers would default to being the last man back, because he literally would be the last man back in that situation. So he can't change until Hamonic, the puck carrier, actually moves the puck past the center line and into the offensive zone via, like, if he dumps it in or carries it in and they set up, then Myers can actually make the long change. But
I guess,
because Hamonic is the puck carrier, he automatically defaults into being the last man back. And so it completely screws him when Hamonic, for whatever reason, hands off to him, skates into the neutral zone, and it's just Myers on his own. Like,
Myers completely whiffs on that pass, and it's like, and you literally see him. I mean, he does this a lot, but he's just standing there. Like, the play just moves around him. Like, and he's just kind of waving his stick at the puck, and Mark Scheifele puts it in, and it just does. He's just a pylon. He's literally just an obstacle. He's basically not a player at that point. You have to make those shifts shorter. You have to you have to get off. You have to get off the ice, and you have
breaking news.
We have actual breaking news.
We have actual breaking news. The Canadian government has officially approved 7-day quarantines for NHL players. So was that not
already a thing today?
It might have been. It just popped up on my phone. It would be very funny.
Just pop on my phone as well.
It would be very funny if it was like months old news. It was just like they were late. But that's actually huge, because obviously the trade deadline is coming up, and I don't know. I'm kind of done talking about the Canucks playing like shit. We can probably get into the
why not?
News. So regarding this breaking news, the NHL trade deadline is, I think, in 2 weeks or something, 3 weeks now. 16th?
Yes,
so 3 weeks. Yeah. So if players only need a 7-day quarantine, then that actually changes a lot and makes the Canucks way more flexible in what they can do when they approach this trade deadline, which we all hope, fingers crossed, they are sellers. They
Yes.
have to get rid of every single UFA that they've got, because now that they've picked up Boyd and VC, they have to get rid of bodies, because otherwise you're going to lose them when you throw them on waivers, because Pearson, Beagle, Sutter, or whoever are all of a sudden back on the active roster. So I would hope that the 7-day quarantine thing changes their perspective a bit. Maybe they go fire sale, just get rid of absolutely everything, call up all the Canucks forwards the Comets forwards that they can, since they're not playing either. And you just ride out the season with a mentality of, let's see what we've got.
Yes, that should be the way they go. The hard question is, because I don't know what the quarantine rule is for the players that go from Canada to the US. I think that's is that also 7 days, or is that like a little bit longer? Because
the States one is like nothing. So Jack Rathbone,
it's like a couple days,
Vancouver to Utica, and he had to quarantine for 3 days. That was it.
Right.
So there's no concern. Like if any of the teams in the States now wanted Brandon Sutter, which, I mean, hey, some teams are apparently interested, all the power to them. If some team in the States, like if, God forbid, the Kings want Brandon Sutter for that final year because they think they can make a decent push or whatever with what they've got, get their kids as much playoff experience as they can while they're still young, maybe they go for it, and then they only have to quarantine Brandon Sutter for 3 days or 2 days or whatever it is. So that's actually like, this allows them a lot more flexibility in who they can actually deal with, because right now they might have been thinking, oh, we can only operate within our division for trades, because otherwise we might be screwed come the week of the trade deadline and we suddenly are down 3 forwards and have no bodies to play.
The only deals we have available to us are basically ones that make all our opponents better and just further put us in deeper into the hole.
Exactly.
So yeah, this does help them a bit, and I mean, now the question: if this is happening, if this 7-day thing is in existence now, let's see. Wednesday was their last game. I think this is day 2 of their 6 days off. Mm-hmm. If you trade, the question is, why don't you need to start making some deals now rather than later? Because, hey, if you make them now versus, say, closer to the deadline, not only are you kind of beating out the rush of teams that are going to start trying to move all of their assets, all their key assets, arguably assets that are better than yours and are more valuable to other teams. The 2 selling points you really have right now that are on your side is time and the court, and the fact that you happen to be on a break, which I guess are both kind of time aspects, but I digress. The fact is, if you can really minimize the amount of damage of trading out a rostered player right now, because right now you'll only I think play 1 game before they'll only be out for 1 game. Versus say the 5 they might have been out for before.
Especially if you're the Canucks right now, when you have the next 4 days off or whatever, like you might as well be wheeling and dealing now while the prices are still pretty high. Like Eric Stahl just got 2 picks. Yeah, like 700-year-old Eric Stahl.
The big thing with this draft is that it's really like it's kind of a crapshoot. Yeah. Because, lots of these kids didn't play a lot of games. It's very hard to scout young talent when they're not playing, and because of obviously with COVID and everything. And it's very much a case of you just need a bunch of tickets for the lottery this time around, right? You just need as many picks as you can get is the better way to operate this time around. Guys who maybe would be a first round pick in a year where there's better scouting and more opportunities to kind of keep an eye on players. This year, you might be able to accidentally wind up with in a 3rd or 4th just because they didn't play a lot of games.
Exactly.
So all you want are as many tickets for that draft as you can. It doesn't really matter what round they're in too much.
Yeah, because you might have a steal.
Because I
have no idea.
Do you even know who the consensus number 1 pick is this year? Because I sure don't. I don't think there is one.
I thought at one point it was supposed to be Brandt Clark. But
that was a name.
that's the one name I heard a lot of. But like, yeah, like to your point, I couldn't tell you. It's not like last year where everyone was like, "Oh, the number one guy." You know what I mean? Like there isn't one for
and
this.
You heard that
year.
name last year, yeah. And Brant Clark was a name you heard last year. It's not even like a name you've heard recently, specifically because he plays for the Barrie Colts in the OHL, which as of right now has yet to play any games. So he has not played a single game all year.
Yeah, it's so like teams like are going to, I mean, smart teams are going to recognize that if you load up on 3rd round picks, 4th round picks, 5th round picks, like you might actually get like a complete steal than say a team that holds on to its first, its second, and then trades away everything else and thinks they know their guy already. Like every draft is a complete lottery, but this one obviously is like just
even more so.
It is outside of probably I think JD Burke said like outside of the top 10 or something, it is just a complete like clusterfuck as to who's going to go where. Like they have no idea who's going to be evaluated, what way. It's going to be a complete gong show. And so if you're the Canucks, who by all accounts should be sellers right now, they have all their picks, I think, except for
let's see,
I know it's like their third or something.
They have all of them. They have all of them. The only third that they're missing
is the one for Schmidt.
Is the one for Nate Schmidt, and that's in 2022. So they've got one missing. They've got all their picks, but they have no others. They have absolutely no. They have not added any picks other than their own.
And considering that like the overhaul of their draft and scouting staff, like it makes sense. Like this isn't a year you're going to go all in. So why not give the one working department from your regime over the last 7 years, give them as much ammunition as possible for a draft where you might find yourself a Niels Hoglander in the 5th round this year or in the 6th round. Like,
if you find another Adam Gaudette, like that's a perfectly good. That's a perfectly good.
If you can find credible depth in the latest rounds of a draft, even while you're still competing in this wonky division where you could pick up 3 draft picks for this year's draft and still might eke into a division because, you know, someone gets injured on the Jets and it fucks up everything, or someone gets injured on the flank. Like, you know what I mean? Like even outside of injuries, COVID's still around. Someone can get COVID and it just fucks up everything. Like you have no idea. So why not try to load up on every possible avenue of success, which includes selling your UFAs who are 31 plus years old and have no business being re-signed to deals. Get rid of them, sell.
And just to kind of add on to that, even if you were going to say load up, why would be the point of that? Like, do you really want to load up just to get your ass kicked by Montreal or Toronto in the first round? Is that really worth it to you? Like that time? Well, like if this were a year where people were in the stands, that's different. But in a year where you're not making any playoff revenue, there's none of that extra stuff to be had. There's really no reason to go for that, to go crazy and try and load up for the honor of being like a fly on Austin Matthews' shoulder for 4 games. Like, there's no point.
Yeah, it's like basically like figuring out like priorities. Like if the Canucks current regime have like some kind of acknowledgement with Francesco Aquilini, like, hey, I need you to just get me into the playoffs. I don't care how well we do. I just need to be able to sell tickets for next season.
Next year. Yeah.
Then maybe a first round is all they need.
Yeah,
for the business side of things.
That is fair. But again, you could still do that even with a weakened roster.
Yes.
Like imagine what an A+ success it would be for the Canucks if they managed to not only trade off all of their available assets, but somehow, even if it was just by sheer complete luck on their part, a complete fluke, if they accidentally walked into the first round of the playoffs like as the 4th seed, even with like all their with AHL guys and like Jack Rathbone playing minutes and Mark Michaelis on the main roster, like that to me is a way bigger success than going in than trying to load up for the exact to get the same result. Like
I don't see a world where the team loads up by selling Brandon Sutter their first and second round picks to get Taylor Hall, and they play 5 games against the Jets and get crushed the entire time. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you might as well try and just play all the kids. And hey, if you know what's going to sell more tickets for next year is if
Youth.
you sell off a bunch of elderly people and bring in a bunch of kids, and they provide you credible depth for cheap and get you into the playoffs anyway. That's going to put way more butts in seats, assuming, that we can get butts in seats. Like, I don't know if you saw the numbers of COVID-19 today, but
now hold on. I went to a bunch of games last year specifically to see Brandon Sutter. Are you telling me now that I'm not going to be able to do that?
Yeah,
come on.
That's what
like,
you did, right?
Well, I'm out.
Totally.
Like, I'm out after that.
I'm going to sell my Sutter jersey.
The biggest interesting thing is, like, there isn't like any specific names that are popping up here for the Canucks right now in terms of like who might be on the available asset side of things, because
they had the one tweet from someone where they were like, after saying they'd close the books, no one's being fielded, they're not taking any calls, and then this morning they had a tweet being like from Elliot Friedman where he's like, yeah, I think things have changed, the team appears to be seeing what they can get for everyone, including all their UFAs, Adam Gaudette. Like,
I'm going to pull that up.
It's kind of funny how living day by day can see your philosophies on thinking for the future change as rapidly as it does in the Canucks head office. I would love to be a fly in the wall in Jim Benning's office where, he fields a call from someone who offers him a 5th round pick for Brandon Sutter at 50% retained. And Jim goes, oh, no, not right now. Thanks. We are contending. You know what I mean? Like, it would be wild just for a day, just to hear the kinds of calls that he's getting on some of these players. And I mean, this isn't
okay. It was a David Pagnotta tweet, the 4th period. 3 weeks ago today, they mentions a quote about Tanner Pearson. As of last night, there's been no offer made, nor has Benning called his agent. Trade deadline 17 days away. That's not the quote you were looking for, but that's kind of in the same concept, like same ballpark of what's going on. I did see what you're talking about. Went to Elliott's, couldn't find it. But yeah, there was something about that today where they're looking at basically every avenue, which they, should have been doing before.
Which a proactive team should be doing. They need to be exploring every avenue to be successful. That's why, like, when you see them take Jimmy VC and Travis Boyd on waivers, you're like, okay, that's great. That's how you build a successful team, is where you find ways to be better for cheap and for free by not giving up assets, by not giving up significant cap space. If you can do that with waiver wire pickups, historically, like, when was the last one that really made a difference? Like, has to go back at least 10 years to get like one that really matters. Like Jelena, like fucking
Jeff Cowan
ages ago. You know what I mean? Like, you have to go back a ways to get a guy that like actually like was a waiver wire pickup that actually contributed further than the season that he was picked up in. But it still lends to a productive, successful team. And to the point of exploring all your avenues and trading away and still maybe finding your way in playoffs, if you can find a way to look successful with these waiver wire pickups and do a Montreal thing where you flip those waiver wire pickups for assets, then you're just golden. Like, you might as well. Like, if
they've done it.
Sorry, go ahead.
They've done it before. Oh, they've done it before. Like, in a way, with Thomas Vanek, when they signed him for 1 year, I loved that because I was like, oh, not only is this a guy who is fun and entertaining, if he does all right and you trade him, you could trade him at the deadline if things go well and recoup some assets. And if it doesn't work out, who cares? 1 year, it didn't matter. It happens sometimes. Yeah. And sure enough, they traded him and got Tyler Mott, which I think was a little low, but still, they got something. They got something out of it, which is a guy who's still on the team for that matter. It's the kind of stuff that, that's the kind of asset management that matters. And I mean, I even look at teams like, I know this might make some Vancouver people turn the show off. But like, I like the Toronto Raptors. I pay attention to what they do because I find them interesting. Like, not on like,
the Raptors are big. I don't think anyone will be turning off for that.
Well, some people get weird about Toronto teams in general, which I get. But I always find them really. I don't pay like I'm not like paying like hanging on every like news story that comes out about the Raptors, but I pay fair. I pay like bandwagon attention, during the year. And I always find what like their management group does, like Masai Ujiri and I think Bobby Webster is the name of their general manager. They do a really good job at at looking at every possibility, even if that means doing something that might be unpopular at the time and going for it anyway. Like when they traded DeMar DeRozan to get 1 year of Kawhi Leonard, they traded one of the few stars the team had who had been willing to sign a long-term extension in Toronto, and they traded him to get 1 year of Kawhi Leonard to see what they could maybe win something.
And it worked.
And it worked. Now, the Canucks aren't in that area, but it's that idea of, hey, sometimes you have to do something a little bit, you have to think a little bit outside the box. I'm not saying you should trade any of like the core guys or anything, but I'm saying you should look at some of the guys who maybe they're more attached to, like a Sutter, like even a JT Miller in a way, like if you can or a Nate Schmidt, if you can get some assets for them that might prove to make you better for next year and for the longer term and open like a longer cup window, that's the stuff you should be looking at, because those are the things that could really make a real difference.
Yeah, you need to be like basically making yourself a better team like at all times in different facets. You can't just like be looking at Thatcher Demko and being like, oh, we can ride him, stonewalling 46 shots every night. That'll last forever. Because look at a team that was just in the playoffs and was like at one point like one of the cup favorites last year. Look at Carter Hart and the Philadelphia Flyers.
Oh my God.
They were so in on his development and where he was going last year. Like it was like they were basically flying into the playoffs and were
Flyers
poised this year to be like favorites for the cup again. And Carter Hart cannot stop a puck to save his life.
Do you know what his save percentage is right now?
Isn't it like 5? Is it like 540 or something?
No, it's not that bad. That would be.
I know it was 540 for the last game.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yes, it was. It was 545 for the last game. So that is true.
On the total, I would say it has to be sub 890 or something.
It is 869.
Oh, that's
not
horrific.
Nice.
Like
not nice. 869 is not nice.
So yeah, you hear, oh my God, you see like, because Carter Hart had like all the poise to be like, oh man, he's going to carry this Flyers franchise next year, even though the playoffs didn't really work out for them in the bubble. This could be next year's going to be like when things really get together. Like Alain Vigneault teams usually do really well hot off the gate when he joins a team. Like players usually buy in really quick. You can't have that happen for Demko. You can't ride him 2 years, or sorry, like 1 year and then next year, so 2 years straight of him just getting shelled, and hope that when the team is in its elite window, according to the GM, that his body is broken and incapable of stopping pucks a la Carter Hart. Because then all the work you've put in for the following 2 years to get an actual contender ready and with the goaltending you need, it doesn't fucking matter. And you have to restart because you destroyed your goaltender in the years previous trying to scrape by into the playoffs. Like, it's just not going to fly. So I see the Carter Hart situation unfolding, and he's still young-ish enough that he can bounce back and maybe things will kind of sort themselves out for them. But big red flags where you see just like, especially with Demko's injury history, like a lot of red flags and alarm bells kind of go off when you see him getting completely worked in these games where their Canucks are getting blown out.
Yeah. And, it doesn't matter what position a guy is. If your strategy of team construction is this one guy will bail us out every single night, it doesn't matter what position they play. eventually it's going to get you in trouble. It might work once, like it might work in the short term, maybe once, but if you think that's a long-term path to success, you're very wrong. I mean, you can go down the list of all the different times teams have tried to basically just have one player will them in. I mean, you just look at Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. I mean, they have two, and they've made the playoffs once in their careers. Like, it just doesn't, and they're going to this time for the second to make it number 2, because again, they've finally gone, hey, maybe we actually need to surround these guys with some sustainable depth and talent. And they'll actually get in this time around. But yeah, you can't rely on Thatcher Demko to bail you out 100% of the time, because what happens the second he can't? And that's not to say he's gonna, and that could just be he gets hurt for a short period of time, or he maybe has a year where he loses a step. That happens sometimes. I mean, Braden Holtby clearly has been that kind of a case. You know, he's a guy who won a Vezina trophy and now he's a backup. Like, it can happen to any good goaltender, where it just goes quickly, where it just goes sideways one year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, you have to be able to find a way to build a much more sustainable group and roster around Demko and not be reliant on him to do it every single night. Yes, the Canucks, when at their best, had Roberto Luongo, one of the greatest goalies of all time, backstopping them nearly 90% of the time. But he couldn't bail them out every night. The reason they won so many games wasn't because he was stealing games left and right. It's because they also had the Sedins, and they had Kessler, and they had Bieksa, and they had, you can go down the list. Like, they had the sustainable talent to back it up so that they didn't need Roberto Luongo to stand on his head every single night.
We talked about this, I think, in our last episode. We were like, you need to actually have credible depth. You can't just like have 6 players who are your go-tos to actually make shit happen and then hope the rest don't fall in their faces. That isn't
depth. You need Manny Malholtras. You need a bunch of Manny Malholtras.
You need a Selke candidate in your bottom 6. You can't just be like, oh, well, this guy is 30 something years old and has two-way play, therefore he's our bottom 6. And like, no, you need elite talent. Like, look at Tampa Bay. Like, they have Anthony Cirelli, who is like a Selke candidate at 24 years old, in their middle 6 to bottom 6. That's how deep they are. Anyone on the Canucks bottom 6
there too. Like, Jesus, they just
like if you threw Tanner Pearson over to the Lightning, he'd probably be a bottom 6 he'd be a 4th line forward. You know what I mean? Like, the depth. And
that's not on him. That's no. And that's not. That's no. And that's no shot at his capabilities.
No, it's to make people realize like just how the difference between what Canucks management thinks is depth and what a contender's depth actually is. It's a completely different world, basically.
Like, we can make jokes about the whole fact that Nikita Kucherov is injured and they're circumventing the cap with it right now to a certain extent. Like, we can make that joke all we want, but even without him there, like, and if other players got hurt, they have more people waiting in the wings who are decent enough that they could still do just fine. Like, they're missing Nikita Kucherov, and without him, they haven't skipped a beat. Like, that's how deep you are. He's their best player. He won a Hart Trophy. That is something the Canucks do not have. Like, yeah, they won a few games without Elias Pettersson, but imagine you have to play a full season without Elias Pettersson. Are they going to make the playoffs? I don't think so.
No. I mean, even with Pettersson playing at 50% of his ability, this team was a complete tire fire and couldn't even string together wins to start the season. Like, they need, like, man, when their top 6 is off, like, let alone like in the lineup, but when they're just off, this team can't win games.
Yeah.
So you can't have a lineup that is meant to be elite or competing with elites that needs everyone standing on their heads and playing above average relative to everyone else on the team. That isn't a recipe for success. And I don't know, we probably shouldn't keep going on this because we're just going to depress everybody. So why don't we get into something that will, I don't know if this will be like a shock to anyone. It wasn't a shock to me. Maybe the process was a bit of a shock just because it doesn't solve anything, but Tim Peel gets busted on a hot mic for basically saying exactly what everyone knows, and that referees call makeup penalties, even though there isn't really one there, just because they need game management things to happen. Yep. Everyone knew this was happening. Alex Burrows called it out with Stéphane Auger.
It's a complete
back in the day.
Open secret.
It's an open secret. Nothing new. I think it's goofy that Colin Campbell, of all people, decided that the integrity of the game came first, which is like the biggest joke coming from him.
I'm gonna pull up Wyatt's armies from the couple games ago, because he went all in.
He went all in, and they were great because, man, like the Colin Campbell saga is just unbelievable. Like, I might be wearing a tinfoil hat and look like a crazy person, but this isn't, at this point, it isn't a conspiracy theory that Colin Campbell acted in ways that benefited his son's team, the Boston Bruins, in 2011. There was the email leaks that came out, and he basically said he was mad that he got caught, not at the fact that everything he was doing was in direct a direct contradiction of what his role as an NHL executive was, which was biased and directly benefiting his own son in a nepotistic fashion that helped his son's team have success and get his son a Stanley Cup ring that he also once got. Wyatt's armies were like just a reliving of past frustrations, having read all of the conspiracy theories surrounding 2011. Tim Peel getting fired doesn't actually bring me any joy. It doesn't solve any of the actual problems. Jason Botchford, the late great Jason Botchford, had a brilliant provies at the time that basically said Colin Campbell's entire existence warrants a letter from the NHLPA that demands transparency and exposes just how deep the rabbit hole goes when it comes to dishonest practices, nepotism, all that crap. And here we are 11 years later, after that post from Jason Botchford, or whenever that was, 2014, 2011, 12, doesn't matter. Yeah. The fact is, it's 2021. Everyone knows game management is a thing. Colin Campbell still has an NHL executive job too, which blows my mind. He's got to be like 150 years old. But the fact that
I think he'd already kept his job fired
after that, like the fact that he still has a job even after the email leak thing, after celebrating the cup win with his son on ice in Rogers Arena, like you just pull your hair out. Fortunately, I have a very heavy metal hat on my head that is preventing me from being able to pull my hair out. But I don't know, your thoughts. I don't think the Tim Peel firing actually addresses any of the deep issues with the Canucks, or sorry, not the Canucks, but with the league. What about you? What do you think?
I mean, I think, Tim Peel, was Tim Peel a good ref? No, he was not a good ref. He was very one of the, the exhibit A's of bad game management, making poor decisions, and just doing a bunch of things that were completely detrimental to the on-ice product of the sport. But he's going to get scapegoated. But he's getting scapegoated for this whole thing, even though he is clearly he's not the outlier. He is very clearly one part of a very systemic issue that goes to the NHL, up to the NHL, and the way that they want games run, and that's this whole idea of makeup calls and stuff. Like, look, I understand to a certain extent the idea of, hey, if a game between these two teams gets chippy and you don't want that, you call penalties a little bit earlier and a little bit more on the softer side because you don't want things breaking out and getting bad. I understand that to a degree, but then that whole game has to be called that way. The biggest problem is really the fact that they don't call it by the book. There's a rule book that they just really don't follow. What's considered a hooking penalty in the first period is suddenly not a hooking penalty late in the third because they don't want to influence the game. Even though every decision you make influences the game in some way or another. By not making a call, you're influencing the game. It doesn't matter what it doesn't matter what. If it's in the rule books, call the rules as they are, not as they want them to be. Like, imagine if we were like that in real life. Like, imagine if it was like, if you commit tax fraud, like, early in the morning, you go to jail. But if you do it between like the hours of 5 p.m. and 7, the police are just like, look, we already did the crime stats today. We already have so many of these. We don't want to influence the numbers today. So we're going to let you go on this one. Or imagine it's like, oh, a bunch of my buddies already commit tax fraud today, so I'm going to go out and commit perjury because I know they're not going to arrest me for that now because they've already arrested so many tax people who've committed tax fraud today, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's that kind of, like, imagine if life worked like that. And I saw some people, like, on Twitter, like some former athletes who are now like sports commentators on Twitter saying, like, I don't see what the big deal is. Like, there are makeup calls in every sport, like in football and everything. The difference is that these aren't really makeup calls. What they're actually doing is even up calls, which is where they basically want to keep the penalties even among both teams.
They think they're managing
level of fairness
such a way that people are gonna just like suddenly not play hard or something, or they're gonna not hit hard on the next shift. Like, the logic is so dumb, and it's so old white hockey man that you just kind of have to laugh at it pretty much.
Yeah. What they're doing is by trying to, in the idea of fairness, what they're actually doing is punishing teams that build a clean hockey team because it just doesn't matter at the end of the day. Teams who play completely dirty still get just nearly as many penalties as a team that plays clean. Like, yes, you'll notice the scale, but it's very much it's a lot closer than you would like. The only difference that maybe factors in is, like, if you take out, like, only thing that would make a real difference in a dent is fighting majors. If you take all those out and just look at the minor penalties, or even like the 4-minute like the double minors, like, I think you'd be surprised at how close it is across the board for everybody. Like, it makes no sense because if you play dirty, you should be getting penalized far more than the other team every night. It shouldn't be this whole, because we've called 3 on them, we don't want to call another one, and so they can just get away with murder for the rest of the game until they call 3 more penalties on the other team. It's completely detrimental, and it makes the game less fun, and I argue that it makes it harder for new people to get into the sport because, like, I don't watch football, but I know what pass interference is. I don't watch basketball, but I know what a violation what a shot clock violation or a traveling is, because they don't change. It doesn't change based on what point of the game is going on. Whereas a new person getting into hockey, I should be able to tell them why this was a penalty and why it isn't. Whereas if somebody asked me, half the time I'd be like, I don't know. Like, I don't know why that wasn't a penalty. It should have been, but it wasn't called. Because they do this game management thing and it completely messes up the system. And I've ranted about it enough. Like, it just, the whole system needs to change.
The system's broken, and all Tim Peel's firing and the hot mic incident, all it does is just expose the fact that, like, there's a tough, like, solution here where they have refs mic'd up all the time and you're always listening into their actions. So at least there's transparency and you know why they make the decisions they make. Maybe that helps. Patrick Johnson had a great article with the province where he basically identified how rugby does the exact same, and they don't really seem to have a reffing issue in rugby because of it. I don't know if the NHL is ever going to be that proactive enough to do something like that, but hey, that's pretty much the only option moving forward right now. Or I'll pitch this because maybe it's the tight hat and the aluminum foil cutting off oxygen to my brain, but hear me out. They get rid of penalties altogether, and it is just the wild, wild west. Tyler Myers on the third line, hacking people's arms off, back to 1980s hockey, total wild, wild west shit show. Let's effing go.
See, that's how you end up with more Marty McSorley hitting Donald Brashear in the face with a stick. I don't love that. I think you cause a lot. I get the old crime is now legal sort of aspect to it. It's basically the NHL
It's
purge.
yeah, it's
The
the
NHL
purge. Every
purge.
game is the purge. Just like you can now hack arms off.
I feel like you just see a lot more a lot more people ending up in the hospital after one game.
Yeah,
I feel like that wouldn't change anything. I'm just
star
gonna
players'
I know
careers. Star
crazy I know.
players' careers last like 4 months. That's it.
That's the and that's the whole other thing. Like the fact that
Yeah,
so many star players are expected to in this whole game management thing. Like if you're gonna be unfair about the rules, like at least make it unfair in the favor of the guys that pay everyone else's paycheck. Like good
yeah,
lord, the amount of like stuff that they have to deal with on a game to game basis where
yeah.
and like when you hear NHL people talk about it, like Ray Whitney I think is in the Department of Player Safety. He's like, well, I expect them to earn it. I expect them to play hard and
Okay.
they have to take their lumps because that's how I played. It's like, no, they
Yeah.
pay your goddamn salary. You better be calling if anyone lays a finger on Connor McDavid, they better be in the box every time.
Honestly, like the fact that the NHL insists on hiring former players as not even former players, former goons as members of the Department of Player Safety is like will forever be the biggest joke in the history of the NHL. The fact that George Peros runs a company called Violent Gentlemen as his side hustle and is the one who is dictating suspensions and fines for players for bad hits, dangerous hits, reckless moves. And half the time, his reasoning on why things aren't suspensions, fines, or what have you are because when he was a player, guys police themselves better. Like,
Oh my god.
I don't even
Yeah.
want to get into it because
But
I am losing oxygen.
but Cody, like
But
he has fighting experience. He knows what's illegal because he did those illegal hits.
yeah,
That's why
exactly.
he's the
He knows what's
perfect person to do this. Like I don't see I fail to see the disconnect here. Like
yeah,
this
fair.
seems like this is genius. No, it's so stupid.
Yeah.
Like but the thing is like even like I mentioned Ray Whitney, like I think he was one of the guys that didn't take a lot of penalties, and even he's spouting it. It's like this is
Yeah.
a systemic these old people don't know what they're doing. Like these what they think works is because they're from a different era and they don't actually understand why hockey is the way it is. They do all this stuff and then they're like, I don't see why hockey's not more popular.
Yeah, I can't
Like,
believe
I can
we're
tell
such
you
a
why.
specific niche sport. Weird.
Yeah, it's weird that we're so far behind the NFL, the NBA, and the MLB when I personally think the product the NHL puts out when it's at its best is better than most of those leagues. That's me.
Yeah, for sure.
When it's at its best, I think it's the best game in the world, but the problem is it's ran by people who actively make it worse and more unreachable for new fans. And it's got to change.
Definitely.
Which is why it's good to see the NWHL is back because we're all going to go there now. This is an NWHL podcast again.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the NWHL except the logos of some of the teams. I couldn't tell you a single player. So, Lachlan, why don't you enlighten me with what's going on today with the Isabel Cup?
Yes, admittedly, I don't know a whole lot about it either, but I'm trying to learn.
Okay, well, that sums up our NWHL section.
Okay. Now hold on. I do know who's in the playoffs and everything. I mean, the Boston Pride did win earlier today against the Toronto Six, who are an expansion team, 5-1 in the semifinal. And I believe as of right now, it's 5-0 Whitecaps, Minnesota Whitecaps over the Connecticut Whale, my team. It's it's good to see them come back. They're only doing it for 2 nights just to finish the year, just to get it done. I believe tomorrow would be the championship game between Boston and likely Minnesota.
Single elimination tournament, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's good to pay. It's good to watch. It's good to give exposure to the women's game. I believe they're on nationally televised and a primetime broadcast tomorrow. On NBC.
On Sportsnet or something like that, isn't
and
it?
I think also maybe on Sportsnet too. I know NBC in the States, or NBCSN in the States, which is huge. That stuff matters. And like you go to like the professional, the PH, I'm gonna get this wrong, the PWHPA, I think is what it is. I always forget the acronym. They've been doing like their dream tour, which I think has been going quite well. I think they're not playing at the moment. They haven't played in a couple weeks or something. But those are the kinds of things that if you like hockey and you just want to support the game, like watch them. Like the product the NWHL puts out is very good.
They're fun games. Like
they're very good. Yeah. I think there's an expansion team coming to Montreal pretty soon.
Same ownership group as the Toronto Six, I believe.
Yeah, there you go.
As reported by. Yeah, it's weird. I follow a bunch of NWHL reporters and stuff, but like I have no idea what's going on in the league. I just feel
shout out Marissa and Jamie.
Support like the Marissa and Jimmys of the world who
I'd love to get her on the show. She'd be great to bring on to talk about hockey.
Because obviously I have no idea what I'm talking about, but hey, we're trying. So
yes.
Shout out to the NWHL for actually getting primetime opportunity with Sportsnet and NBC. Like that's rad. That's what the sport needs. It needs like this. I'll tie this back to my old MMA reporting days where all you really had was the UFC. There was no other leagues really going on from 2007 until 2021. There still really isn't a valid competitor to it. So if you don't like the product that the NHL puts out, you have options now like the NWHL who are producing games on major networks like NBC or Sportsnet. Whereas UFC, if you don't like their product, that's kind of tough shit because there's nothing else to compete with. So variety is good. And the fact that NWHL is getting a platform like this, that's great. I'll probably be tuning in tomorrow because, hey, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely watch that game. If I believe they're broadcasting all the games on Twitch as well, so you can watch. So it's very accessible. It's free. You don't even have to have cable to watch. You can just pull up the Twitch app on your phone and watch it from there.
Sick.
And is there anything else you want to get to before we get out of here?
Yeah, just lastly, because April 6th, I believe, is the deadline for the Botchford Project. Props, a lot of props and kudos in this last section. Props and kudos to The Athletic, Jeff Patterson and Thomas Drance, and I think Ryan Beach is involved still for another season of the Botchford Project. It's going to be only 3 people selected out of a bunch of applicants to be invited to games, work on stories, get player access that they otherwise wouldn't have. I had a wonderful time at my Botchford Project night, as David Quadrelli put it on the most recent Canucks Conversation episode. Cody Sievertson is a 27-year-old man whose real-time job has nothing to do with sports journalism. He's just a dude, and I'm going to make that picked.
I'm going to make that your tagline on the CreaseCast website.
He's just a dude. That's honestly that was the coolest thing I ever heard on a podcast, was just being referred to 3 years younger than I actually am, but also as he's just a dude. So
he's just,
just a dude can get on there. Like obviously this season for the Botchford Project is going to be way more different because there's so few spots available. But if you applied last year, you're interested in journalism, you're interested in getting access to players in a bizarre season that will enhance a piece you're working on, or you just have an idea that will be only made better by player access or access to the local Vancouver media that are fully invested in supporting the people that go through this program, do it. My DMs are open. I've tweeted about it, I think, every day. I don't think I've done it today, but I probably should. My DMs are open. I've had a few people already message me for questions and tips on how to write their applications. I am happy to help anyone, achieve their dreams and get a look. Like it was a door opener for me. I was fortunate enough to meet a lot of great people and connect with a lot of people, even way after the Botchford Project experience was over. I appreciated my time on there, even if I was an anxious wreck the entire time.
I don't think you were alone on that. I think if you asked all the Botchford Project winners, I'm sure they would all say the exact same thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. So if I, just a regular dude with no, actual sports journalism career in his real life, can do it, you guys can too. And I urge you all to hit me up on my Twitter DMs. I'm at Cody Sievertson. You can also see my work at cometsharvest.com. So send me whatever you're working on. Let me take a look. Let me see how I can help you achieve the same dream that I was able to achieve. Lachlan, I know you're applying, but where can the fine folks of the CreaseCast follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Lach and the Crease, and you can check out my website, lachandthecrease.com, where I do the North Division Power Rankings every single Sunday. I also do I also keep track of jersey records so you know which Canucks jerseys are the most lucky and which ones are the most unlucky. It's not. Is that considered journalism? Maybe, kind of, not really. But is it fun and something I'm just kind of trying to do to just make things fun and more interesting because this season has been so hard to watch?
So tough,
yeah,
yes.
We're just trying to make things entertaining for you this
fun
year.
Fun is journalism as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. And in that same vein, we'll have a new Off the Post coming out likely this weekend, probably. I don't know.
Probably, yeah.
Sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so otherwise, guys, you can also follow us. Just don't forget to follow and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We post every single podcast in YouTube form where you can see me in my aluminum foil hat. Hopefully you haven't heard it too much as I turn and twist my head during this recording. Otherwise, there is our Patreon with $1 and $5 tiers where we have all kinds of bonus content. Until our next episode, where we will probably be doing mostly an NHL news recap since the Canucks do not play until next Wednesday. And even then, that's kind of up in the air due to the outbreaks of a COVID variant with other North Division teams.
Oh, boy.
Folks, this has been a fun one. We hope to see you on our next episode. So thanks for tuning in. See you guys.
Bye.